One of the things that I like about London is that even 30 years after I first visited this city, I still find myself stumbling upon charming and historic squares that I've never come across before. One example of this is Golden Square, located somewhere between its more famous cousins St. James's Square and Soho Square. In the early 17th century, Golden Square was on the boundary of the built-up area. Its golden name seems to derive from gelding close, which indicates that the area was used for the grazing of horses. After a brief period as a pit for the mass burial of plague victims in the 1660s, the area was developed by two speculators, John Emlyn and Isaac Simbal. And by 1720, John Strype, in his Survey of London, was describing it as a very handsome place, railed round and gravelled, with very many good houses inhabited by gentry on all sides. And the drawing, which was done in 1727, shows that Strype was right. In the first couple decades of the 18th century, the square was home to several aristocrats, and by the middle decades, it was a popular place for foreign embassies from states such as Poland, Genoa, Russia, and Portugal. In 1750, an act was passed that allowed residents to elect 13 trustees to enclose, pave, enlighten, adorn, and beautify the square. As you can see from this view of the square from 1754, this involved several changes to the square, including the addition of a statue. The statue is not generally recognized as one of London's finest. The Portland stone that it's made of has weathered badly over the years, and in 2013 a new forearm and hand were made and added to the statue because English Heritage were unhappy with the work that had been done on the 1950s restoration. Perhaps unsurprisingly, it's not even clear who the statue is supposed to represent. The notice boards in the square say plainly that the statue is of Charles II. That seems to reflect local folklore, as well as the fact that Charles II seems to have directly approved the development of the land in 1673. There's a pattern of London squares having statues to the person who granted the land for them. Here's the statue to Francis Russell in Russell Square, for example. And here is the statue that is undoubtedly of Charles II in nearby Soho Square. In fact, it may have been confusion with this statue of Charles in Soho Square that led to or strengthened the folklore about the statue in Golden Square also being of Charles. This brings us to the alternative theory that the statue represents not Charles II, but George II. As astute visitors to the square will notice, the plinth, which was made in 1753, the year the statue was put in the square, says very plainly Georgius, i.e. George II. George II was also on the throne at the time when the statue was put up. And finally, we have other examples of George II being portrayed in Roman dress, as he is in this statue in Greenwich. A statue which is even more eroded and almost as undistinguished as the statue in Golden Square. George II, it seems, didn't have much luck when it came to statues. All of which might make us feel pretty sure that the statue in Golden Square on a plinth with Georgius II written on it is in fact a statue of George II. And to my mind at least, that is clearly who the people who set the statue up and wrote Georgius II on its plinth intended it to be seen as. But was the statue originally carved to represent George II in Roman dress, like the statue at Greenwich? We'll probably never know for sure, but there is a theory that the statue was originally made for Cannons, the opulent stately home built by the Duke of Chandos. When the Duke died in 1747, his debts were so extensive that his house was demolished and the contents auctioned off. And it was one of the many statues from this stately home, according to this theory, perhaps a Roman emperor or soldier, or one of the 24 allegorical figures that were on the balustrade. That, only 6 years after the Duke's death, in 1753, was repurposed and erected in Golden Square to serve as a statue of George II. Whether that theory is right or not, by 1839, Charles Dickens, in his novel Nicholas Nickleby, was writing of the square as a little wilderness of shrubs, watched over by a mournful statue. By the end of the 19th century, Golden Square had become an important center for the wool industry. The most conspicuous reminder of this is number 22 Golden Square, which was built higher than the houses on either side of it in order to ensure that its showrooms for fabrics got the best natural light and that it wasn't overshadowed by its neighbors. These neighbors, by the way, are part of a small number of buildings on the square which still have 18th century elements. And they're part of what makes this square such a pleasant and interesting place to stumble upon. Alongside an interesting and enigmatic statue, of course, and some gifts from Bulgarian Londoners.